an unprecedented meteor shower crossed space and formed a huge black hole as if it were shooting stars. Different creatures began to emerge from it. Humanity baptized it with the name of the evil spirits. The evil spirits feed on humans, and being such a weak race, they had no way to counterattack. The surviving humans were forced to establish many safe zones, marking the starting point for the war between humans and beasts. Not long after, the human race experimented with the creatures they had captured, extracting a special substance from the evil spirits. They began injecting it into animals, causing them to mutate and become much stronger than before. Humans with strong spiritual power can establish contracts with mutated animals to turn them into their spiritual pets. As a result of this, a completely unusual but perfect job for the situation appeared. The job of a spiritual master. These masters are seen as the new hope of humanity to fight against the evil spirits. As they are the ones who can combat and defeat these evil spirits, they are highly respected and well received by everyone. On the other hand, we see in the foreground a beast with its mouth on a poor puppy and its owner, our protagonist named Jackie, being bullied by his classmates, who are beating him and torturing his pet in front of his eyes. The cause of this is a rich boy who tells our protagonist that he will kill his pathetic pet. The main threat from this boy is because he does not want to share the class with the protagonist since he is very weak, not from the same social class, and tells him that if he sees him again, he will be in the place of his pet. This boy tells Jackie that he is an idiot for thinking that bringing a husky would turn it into a spiritual pet, since our protagonist is not even capable of signing a contract. Jackie, on the ground, threatens the boy, saying he will kill him, but with a very egocentric attitude, he doubts it a lot since the protagonist cannot even defend himself. So he is also planning to kill the protagonist by summoning his evil spirit to execute him. When the beast is about to eat him, a girl calls the group's attention to what they were doing to our protagonist to come. It turns out that this girl is Jackie's older sister, and she is a very respected member of the academy. So the other boys leave out of respect and leave the protagonist alone. The girl helps him up and tells him to be careful since he is in a society where a normal person like him cannot beat a spiritual master, and warns him that he should not face that boy with his identity as a spiritual master and his family's power. If that boy kills the protagonist, no one will say anything, and everything will remain blank. The protagonist was on the ground, hugging his pet inconsolably, trying to help it, but his sister tells him it is useless since his pet had died. But he is very disappointed and tells his sister that she does not have to try to console him since she has a perfect life and no one bothers her because she is also a spiritual master. Mentioning that there is an immense difference between the two of them, and with tears in his eyes, he says that one day he will definitely become a spiritual master, the most powerful of all, even stronger than the boy who bullied him, stronger than her and everyone else. Night falls, and the protagonist is saying goodbye to his little one, burying it in a forest, very hurt, since from a young age, it was his only company, the only one who never avoided him and accepted him for who he truly was. Even though he was an orphan with his pet nearby, he never felt alone, and with its corpse bleeding, he tells him that he will take revenge for him. Nevertheless, when the blood fell on the ground, it activated a contract that caused a system spirit to appear, notifying the protagonist that the spiritual pet creation simulator system had been activated by the bloodshed from his pet, and that he could simulate and independently create a spiritual pet through the system. The protagonist, very astonished, does not know what this little spirit is talking about, and it explains that to create a spiritual pet, it requires materials that the host can find on his own. The system will also provide the host with a reward, which is a mysterious chest, granting the first one for our protagonist to open. He didn't think twice and opened it immediately, where he was rewarded with hellfire accompanied by drops of blood from an ancient god. The most important thing was an ancient forbidden element that had the ability to manipulate time, currently in a broken and raw state. He already understood everything the system wanted to tell him. In reality, he could bring his little pet back to life and, if that wasn't enough, He could do so by granting it much more strength than it had before. The protagonist didn't think twice and soon started the procedure. When it was over, the pet looked completely different, with a spiritual aspect, as if it were a sacred pet. This is how the pet looked to our protagonist. Furthermore, part of the pet's power was transferred to him, and for the first time, the protagonist could feel an incredible power running through his body. Thanks to this power, he was able to create a contract with his pet for the first time in his life. He was very happy as he could communicate with it. His pet transformed back into what it was before, a small husky, to go unnoticed among people. But the protagonist still has unfinished business with the person who killed him, and without a doubt, the next day, he was going to make them pay. Later, he arrives at his house where his stepmother is waiting, scolding him, asking where he was, what he was doing, why his clothes were so dirty, and that next time she would send him to school naked as punishment. The protagonist, already tired of her treating him very badly, ignores her words. She responds very angrily that if he doesn't listen to her and doesn't do what she wants, she will send him to the streets and he will become a useless orphan without parents again. These words hit our protagonist very hard because when he was born, he received a blow that caused a mental disorder. Mysteriously, his parents disappeared overnight, leaving him completely alone. Thanks to this, he was sent to an orphanage at the age of 5 and was immediately adopted by a very kind family. However, when they saw that his magical powers were damaged, they began to look down on him over time and couldn't throw him out of the house because the law dictates that when parents adopt a child, they have to raise him until he is at least 16 years old before being sent to another orphanage. So they were obligated to keep our protagonist until he was 16 years old, but during all these years, the protagonist had suffered abuse, humiliation, and the words that hurt him the most were that he was useless and a burden, as he was the lowest class in all society and contributed nothing. Previously, he couldn't do anything against them as he had no magical power and had nothing to do. So if he was thrown out of the house, he would die of hunger and cold and didn't want to go to another orphanage either. But now he wouldn't let anyone look down on him again. So he activates his magical powers and tells his stepmother that he is already tired of her. When they see the aura surrounding our protagonist, they are surprised, and his sister steps in to protect their parents. But the protagonist had no intention of harming them. His sister asks if he had gone crazy, and his mother, very upset, asks how he dares to threaten her after raising him as their own son, but the protagonist says that he never received good treatment from them. So he takes his bags and leaves the house while his parents are telling him not to return. The protagonist is already on the street, very satisfied with what he had done. He did not worry about where he was going to live or what he was going to eat. Nevertheless, he heard a voice telling him to stop. It was his sister who tells him to return home and apologize to his parents. She will try to persuade them to let him stay, but the protagonist tells her that he did not say anything wrong and that he would not apologize to absolutely anyone. However, his sister tells him that if that is the case, she will help him by giving him a bundle of money to rent an apartment and buy food for a few days. She is not his blood sister, but she was the only one who did not make fun of him, even when they found out that they never treated him well, but neither did she join the people who bullied him for that. He had a little respect for her. The protagonist says he will take the money as a loan since he will return the money to her later and leaves to find a place to sleep. He arrives at an apartment where the landlord tells him that he will share a room with a pretty girl who has a somewhat strong temper, but is not always in the apartment. Usually, she almost never goes to sleep there, so the protagonist rents it without any problem. The next day, he arrives at the classroom where the boy who had previously killed his pet is surprised because his wounds had healed extremely quickly. Even so, this one addresses our protagonist again, threatening and mocking his dead pet, telling him why he had come back since he had previously threatened him, that if he saw him, he would kill him. This, with a very cold attitude, tells him that he did not think he would meet him so soon and does not pay much attention to him and ignores him. But the other boy tries to hit our protagonist but does not succeed, as this one grabs his hand and dislocates his wrist, giving him a kick in the stomach, causing a sonic wave that sent the boy to the end of the room. those around are very surprised by what they have just seen. Now that power and the atmosphere he felt when executing it was amazing. The other boy, a little scared and surprised by what our protagonist has just done, has no choice but to summon his pet, which is of a 3-star rank, and orders it to kill the protagonist. When the beast was about to strike its attack on the protagonist, he uses his time shock ability and stops it in the air, giving it a strong kick that sends it towards the other boy, causing it to fall on him. Nevertheless, when the boy summoned his pet, a girl who is the class monitor entered to call attention to both, but especially the boy who had his pet out. It is forbidden to summon pets in the classroom. The boy, very angry, tells her not to get into a fight between men and to mind her own business. This caused the girl not obeying his orders to also summon her pet, which is a 4-star phoenix bird that has exorbitant power, being the best of its rank. When it was about to attack the boy, the teacher entered and stopped the fight, calling the girl to attention, since as the class monitor she had to set the example. She tried to defend herself but was not heard, so she ordered them both to put away their pets. And when the boy was about to leave, he tells our protagonist that he will not forget what happened, and that he will definitely pay. The protagonist tells him that he will not forget either, and that the dislocated wrist was only the beginning of the things he will make him pay slowly at the end of the class. The boy goes to the infirmary, and our protagonist is doing punishment rounds with the girl, who it is seen that they are very close. He tells us, story of the protagonist being this girl in the orphanage, but unlike him, she had an enormous spiritual power which assured her a bright future. So this girl was adopted by one of the most important executive presidents of the country. Thanks to the resources that were granted, she became a very talented spiritual master, being the best in the entire class. The bully says not to let herself be manipulated by that boy, since the pet she possesses could severely harm all her classmates. Here, one of the reasons why the boy bothers the protagonist a lot is revealed. It turns out that this boy is in love with this young lady, and she rejected him because she likes the protagonist. And not agreeing with him, the boy has no choice but to bother him. The young lady also feels very bad, as she had heard a rumor that her pet had been killed by the boy, feeling guilty as she is the cause of them bothering our protagonist. The protagonist very gallantly tells her that she is not at fault and that her pet is alive, showing her his husky, which caused great relief to the girl. She also realizes that the protagonist awakened the spiritual contract with his pet, very happy for him. She congratulates him since now he will not be eliminated in the final exams, laughing very happily with our protagonist. But what these two did not know is that they were being watched from the window by the boy, who can be seen to be very jealous and mentions that he will definitely not rest until he sees the protagonist out of the picture. When night falls, the protagonist has to go to his house to rest, where he enters the apartment and notices that the door is not completely closed. He can also notice that someone was taking a shower, and this is where he remembers that the landlord told him that someone else shared the room with him. The mysterious and strong-willed girl is the one who was showering. Since the girl did not remember that someone else lived with her, she came out completely naked, and the protagonist could see her. At first, he reacted very calmly and covered her with a towel. But when the protagonist was apologizing and introducing himself, the girl attacked with a kunai. The protagonist quickly managed to dodge it, and the girl noticed that the protagonist had skills, since dodging one of her kunais was not so easy. So she attacked again with a low blow, and the protagonist blocked it while saying that he was sorry for everything that had happened, and that it was not his intention to see her naked. However, the girl did not listen to the words of our protagonist and continued to attack. Our protagonist had no choice but to immobilize her, to have a very calm conversation with her. So he blocked the attacks and took her by the hands, but the girl slipped on the shower water, and our protagonist fell on top of her. Again, he apologized, and very annoyed, she told him to get off her. The protagonist got off her and asked if she was not going to do anything else with the kunai, and she attacked again, but quickly dodged it. When the girl was going to give a low kick, he activated his shock ability and stopped her. When the girl was already calm, he introduced himself very politely, telling her that from now on they would share the room. The girl, very arrogantly, did not answer him, and only told him to forget what had just happened, or she would kill him. The next day, our protagonist is in the mercenary city to take missions to raise some money. But there was a problem. Our protagonist did not have a mercenary badge. This badge is obtained when you belong to a group registered in the mercenary city, and automatically this badge will be granted. The protagonist knows he has to go to the city square, where several groups are recruiting new companions. Obtain the same badge. So quickly, he leaves to be able to find a group when the protagonist was leaving the mercenary tower. He can see how next to him, a really tall guy with an imposing appearance who did not wait in line and skipped past all the crowds, and the people did nothing but let him pass. Since this guy is a celestial master of rank A, called 1, so he is very respected by the others. This guy has the first place of the most powerful people in the mercenary city, and he is requesting a mission from the girl who previously attended to our protagonist. But she responds that please make the line and follow the company's rules, and this made the guy very angry, and he threatens to kill her if she doesn't do what he wants. The girl reiterates again with a lot of fear that please follow the rules, and he tries to hit the girl with a strong blow that without a doubt would kill her on impact. But it was stopped by a saving hand, which is our protagonist. This guy asks our protagonist who he was, why he doesn't mind his own business. Yu responds that he is just a normal high school boy, but he realized that he couldn't move his hand, which was being held by the protagonist, mentioning, how is it possible that a high school student has such exorbitant strength? All the mercenaries in the room were surprised. They thought the protagonist was dead, since no one had made this guy angry and had come out alive. They are about to witness a massacre. The guy, on the other hand, cannot allow himself to be humiliated by someone like the protagonist in front of so many people. So with a palm shock, he attacks our protagonist, but with a perfect technique at the right moment, he manages to knock him to the ground, leaving everyone speechless. As a high school student had defeated Sean, this guy will not allow himself to be humiliated by someone like the protagonist. So he summons his spiritual pet, which is an A-rank bear that passed the 3 stars of the second stage, which lets out a sonic roar, leaving all the mercenaries in the room deaf, all except our protagonist, who is also going to summon his pet, not without first witnessing how Chong is surprised, because the protagonist was not affected by the bear's attack. Everyone expected that the protagonist's pet would be dangerous, much bigger and more valuable than the bear, but when they saw a chubby husky coming out of the portal, they did nothing but laugh, and the guy did nothing but underestimate our protagonist and tells the bear to attack the dog. Brutal tells his pet not to be underestimated, so it counterattacks. And when the bear lands a low blow, the protagonist's pet jumps through the air. Chong saw no chance of defeat against the protagonist and his pet, since it was just a simple dog and was unable to defeat his bear. But he had to swallow his words when he saw the protagonist's pet transform into a Cerberus. The protagonist's pet launches the attack, and with its time shock ability manages to stop it in the air, effectively counterattacking the bear. Chong was amazed at how good the protagonist's pet was. Still, he asked his pet not to stop at anything and launches a brutal impact attack on the protagonist. He wants to counterattack with a frontal attack, the same attack that takes a toll later since his pet is seriously injured. This is where the protagonist realizes that it was a useless move to use a frontal attack on a brute force pet. It is totally useless. So because of him, his pet was injured. So to prevent things from getting worse, he tells his pet to go rest, and she, very worried about him, listens. Everything was against the protagonist. He knew that his pet had already been seriously injured, but he also knew that the opponent's bear was too. Although physically not, he noticed, but his soul had been wounded. The protagonist tells John to put away his pet as it is also injured, but he does not listen and says it is just a useless animal. And in a very offensive question for him, he says that he is a celestial master and should not even do it if he didn't care. He doesn't shut up, and when he is about to attack him, the boss and owner of the company appear, which is this boy, son of the owner of the mercenary city, and he lets John know that fighting is prohibited. John wants to put all the blame on the protagonist, but the boy doesn't believe him and kicks him out of the tower. John, very angry, leaves and tells the protagonist that this won't be the last time they see each other and to be careful. The boy thanks our protagonist a lot as he put his hand in the fire for his staff and also tells him to be careful with Chong as he is a very vengeful person. A while passes, and the protagonist is in the recruitment plaza where there are several groups that want him. He is not convinced about which to join, none were his type, and among the crowd at a recruitment table, he recognizes his roommate, who was recruiting people for her group. The protagonist approaches her very kindly, noticing the little clothing she wears. The main reason he wants to talk to her is that he still wants to apologize for what happened the previous night, but seeing how the girl reacted, grabbing him by the neck and threatening to kill him, he felt even less inclined to apologize. Nevertheless, a guy interrupts our protagonist and mentions if he has already met his daughter, referring to the girl who reacted very badly, despising her father's love. This intense man tells the protagonist to join his guild, where the laziest group is, as none of them work. When someone else tells the protagonist, he is still not convinced and is enrolled in the group without his consent, later being granted the mercenary badge he needed. Although the protagonist did not want to be with that group, the man forced him to be with his daughter and himself. The girl was not convinced at all and was angry that our protagonist was part of her group. She did not like the idea of fulfilling missions with him at all, as he didn't get along well with her, having a despicable and anti-work attitude towards our protagonist. Later, they go to the lair of the lazy mercenaries group, where our protagonist first notices that there is no one else apart from them and asks where the other members of the mercenary group are, to which they respond that he should not worry about that, as the group only has 3 members: her father, our protagonist, and the girl. Our protagonist is disappointed upon hearing this news, as he feels very cheated, since in that group he could not escape his poverty, deducing that if it's called the group of the lazy ones, he might end up being poorer than before. After introducing the guild leader, who is the girl's father, he tells our protagonist that there is a 2-star mission they can fulfill together with his daughter. He is very excited about his first mission, equipping himself to go fulfill it. But the girl does not agree with the idea and says she will go alone, as the protagonist will only be a nuisance and a burden, and it will be uncomfortable to deal with him. The leader asks our protagonist to please apologize to his daughter, as she always has that attitude with others, and to not pay attention to it. Still, the protagonist tries to persuade her, and by playing with words and praising her skills, he manages to convince her to accompany him with one condition. If the protagonist falls behind, she will not return for anyone and will not care if he dies. The details are given, and they have to hunt a spirit that contains ghost classification energy. Being a ghost classification spirit, no master, spiritual nor any spirit device can capture its interferences. Many people died because of this spirit, accompanied by a high percentage of those who had disappeared, and their whereabouts are still unknown to this day. They were driving through a canyon when suddenly both become hypnotized by a beautiful that crossed their path, and this causes them to go straight to a huge rock about to crash. Both had been trapped in a kind of optical illusion, which is a trap skill of the ghost spirit to prevent the entry of unauthorized visitors. Fortunately for both, the protagonist's pet, being a demon-type pet, can easily detect these abilities and the ghost's energy. So it manages to get the protagonist out of the optical illusion, quickly realizing that they were heading to a big rock and were about to collide. The protagonist yelled at the girl to stop, but it was useless. She was already trapped in the illusion. So the protagonist, as he could, diverted the car from the rock's course, but it still didn't stop since the girl was pressing the accelerator and couldn't stop the vehicle. If she didn't get out of the illusion, the protagonist's pet gives him an idea, which is to use the shock ability to get her out of the illusion, and fortunately it works. So the girl, realizing that they were heading to an abyss, brakes the car abruptly, and the protagonist, not wearing a seatbelt, flies through the vehicle's window, landing on the ground, completely unconscious. The girl quickly gets out of the vehicle with a completely different attitude from what she is. and worries too much about our and he wakes up and mentions to her that in reality she is a soft girl, but she, angry and relieved that the protagonist is alive, tells him to stop fooling around and continue their journey. So the protagonist introduces the girl and explains that it is a demon-type pet that can easily detect the ghost's energy. So it will guide them to find the spirit, and so they reached its location, and the girl also summons her pet, which is a 4-star black panther that can also detect the ghost's energy. Also, it is the reason why the spirit has not attacked them head-on, because it knows that the pets they have are good rivals for it. The protagonist quickly activates his pet to Cerberus level, and the girl is left speechless at the immense difference between the dog from a while ago and the beast she is witnessing right now. It uses a roar ability, which physically shows the ghost spirit that is right in front of them, which was a female spirit with a somewhat macabre appearance, and just as it was physically revealed, it let out a huge scream that leaves everyone stunned, and the girl orders her pet to use its ability, and it does so successfully. Unfortunately, the spirit had disappeared, and this is where things started to go very wrong from here. Someone tried to stab our protagonist in the back, and thanks to his pet's warning, he managed to dodge it, receiving a small cut on his back, but he was astonished to see the responsible for this attack, which is the girl as she is under the spirit's powers, causing her feelings of resentment towards the protagonist to increase more and more over time, and she wants to kill him. Things were looking very bad. Now he had to deal with not just one problem. As if that wasn't enough, he didn't know the exact location of the spirit. There were only 2 ways for the girl to come to her senses. The first was to get rid of the spirit, and the second was to die at the hands of the girl. The protagonist's pet quickly attacks the spirit to help our protagonist, while he faces the girl who was attacking non-stop our protagonist without any rest to the good luck with this one. She had realized that the girl's pet was still with them, and lets her know that if she didn't help defeat the spirit, she would not be herself again. So she gathers strength with the pet in our protagonist, launching a powerful combined joint attack that impacts the spirit. But this did absolutely nothing. He couldn't explain how it survived such a strong attack. And analyzing the situation is where he realizes that there is a kind of glow on its forehead, which lets him know that it's weak point, and asks both creatures to concentrate their attacks on the forehead. Our protagonist is distracted and had forgotten for a moment about the girl, who jumped on him and knocked him to the ground, and when she was going to stab him, the protagonist blocks with both arms, causing severe injuries to them. And thanks to this, he couldn't contain her for much longer, wondering if he was going to die there. The protagonist was at his limit, remembering that being a spiritual master was not all colors and rainbows. Sometimes decisions are made that one is not proud of but must carry on with that burden. However, the protagonist was incapable of doing something that involved killing the girl, so he accepts his fate, saying that he would have loved to know more about being a spiritual master. But at the last moment, when the knife is about to pierce his face, the pet manages to defeat the spirit, and the girl comes to her senses. Realizing what she was doing and immediately removing herself, relieved, she falls into a state of unconsciousness. Later, when everything had gone well, the girl is healing the protagonist's wounds, and here is where the protagonist realizes that she is not as bad as he thought, as inside he said that to be so strong, there exists a very tender girl, but she does not want to admit it. However, their conversation is interrupted by the pet in our protagonist, which brings a rare item in its mouth. This item was a soul pearl. Very surprised, he did not expect that he recognized the soul pearl, and even that he had some knowledge about the advancement of spiritual pets. This pearl allows the spiritual pet, when ingested, to increase all its physical abilities and statistics to a very considerable level, so without thinking, he gives it to his pet so it can eat it, and all its statistics rise a level, unlocking a new rank. This soul pearl is so strong that it even counts as 40 normal souls. Also, the small system spirit appears, which rewards him with another chest as he had unlocked a new rank in his pet, and upon opening it, he was rewarded with a blue water cube, a cosmic magic cube that contains the universe and has the power to control space. He was also rewarded with a staff called the Empress's Center, a superior power capable of enhancing any attribute. This weapon can be big or small, long or short distance, and indestructible, and is very light. The girl was puzzled because our protagonist was talking alone, but in reality, he was receiving the rewards from the system. This is where the protagonist realizes that the system could not be seen by others except him and his pet. So, ignoring the situation, they would go back to their group's hideout, where they would give the commission to our protagonist, and the girl very kindly gives all her commission to her as she was the one who contributed the most to the mission. But our protagonist was scammed by the group leader, who took more than half of the protagonist's earnings as an alleged fund to improve the facilities, so very disappointed and more than anything robbed, he goes to sleep. The next day in the classroom, the teacher announces that there is a surprise exam where their celestial pets will be evaluated by different teachers to prove how talented each student is. The protagonist returns to keeping the original word order and structure, to pair with the boy who annoys and offends him, saying that he should abandon the exam since he does not have any spiritual pet and that he has definitely failed it. But the prota, who no longer lets himself be belittled by anyone, tells him that if he is so man to accept a bet, the test consisted of that a little blood from the spiritual pet of the students would be extracted and would be put to the test in a magical light that will emit the power and the rank. If the pet is high level or low level, it will depend on each one of their pets. What does this mean? If a pet is low rank, it will be with the worst class. The higher the rank rate of the pet, the more probability they have of entering an elite class or even a superior elite class. And so the tests begin, the first student passes, and for his bad luck, light emits a very dim light that lets him know that the pet is low level. The poor boy says that it is the only pet his family could afford. The second to pass was the boy who annoys our prota. While passing by his side, he tells him to remember their bet. If he lost, our prota had to eat excrement and vice versa. Previously, he had a spiritual pet called Iron Wolf, but as he has spare money, he can change pet every time he wants, and chose a much stronger manta and religious of higher rank than his Iron Wolf pet. The machine emitted a very good light, so good that it put him in the second class in the superior unit, a lower class than the highest class of all. It was already expected of this boy, since having spare money he can afford the pet he wants. The second to pass was the girl who is close to our prota, which leaves the whole class surprised. Even the teachers, when the machine gives a too strong light, that meant that her pet was of perfect rank and would be in the highest class of all. They only expected this from her since she is the strongest in the class and daughter of one of the most important executives of the country. Next to pass was our prota. Everyone was criticizing him since they know that our prota had damaged magical powers and had to be played by his soul. Still, they do not have much hope. The boy who annoys him reminds him again of the bet, and he very calmly goes to the front where he opens his portal. In the first place, everyone was impressed, since they did not know that the prota could open portals because his magical power was damaged. But when they saw that his pet came out, which is a chubby and adorable dog, they started laughing, and more than all the boy who annoyed our prota since he thought he had killed that pet and trying to play with the prota's mind. But he ignored him and begins the test, extracting the blood in the pet in our prota, putting it in the machine to give an exorbitant light, too big, much stronger than our prota's friend, classifying it as also a perfect level, putting him in the highest class, leaving everyone totally in shock. Absolutely. Everyone was impressed by what our prota just did. But more than anyone, the boy who annoyed our prota, who was destined to eat excrement. The teacher says that the first round of the exam had ended, and the practical evaluation would be carried out the next day in the forest of the demonic spirits, leaving everyone with an internal fear, since that place is extremely dangerous. The forest of the demonic spirits is full of all kinds of danger. The evil spirits of class A and D can even appear there. Although the school tries to guarantee their safety, nothing is absolute. Therefore, the teacher, since everyone prepare for anything that may appear. The boy who annoys our prota saw this as an opportunity to solve his problem. Later, the protagonist leaves the school while saying that the forest of the demonic spirits is very dangerous, so he has to prepare well. But while he was wandering in his mind, a voice calls him to realize that it is the same boy who is the son of the owner of the mercenary city. It turns out that these two share a school and are in the same year as the protagonist, only in a higher class than him. This boy tells the protagonist that how he had done in the exam, and he responds that fortunately he has entered the superior class. And to his surprise, he had also entered, and his new friend tells him that they should go celebrate it. Where they arrive in a carriage to the Imperial Club, people cannot enter, even if they have a lot of money. Only exclusive people attend there. The boy arriving asks for the best room. But again, the protagonist meets the boy who bothers him, who also attended that club, and upon seeing him, sees the opportunity to bother him, where he says to the protagonist that if by chance he had sneaked into the club, but he will not tell anyone unless he kneels before him and is humiliated. The friend of our protagonist is watching the situation and would be the boy who our protagonist rudely calls him an idiot, and he responds also rudely that who was he? And if by chance he was a scoundrel who shamelessly asks for the best room that not even he himself could get, everyone who goes to the Imperial Club knows that that shamelessly asks for the best room that not even he himself could get. Everyone who goes to the Imperial Club knows that the best room is not something so easy to get. He responds with egocentrism, asking if he was qualified to receive the best room, and asks his assistant if he was qualified, and she confirms, leaving the boy who bothers our protagonist silent. Here is where he realizes that he is the son of Mr. Mercenary in the city. And he also recognizes him as the son of one of the best families in the city. But for him, his family was nothing. He also tells him that our protagonist is his brother. So if he messed with him, he should not blame him for being rude. Very impressed, he does not know how the protagonist has connections with this boy. To top it off, this boy, our protagonist's friend, adds him to the blacklist of the Imperial Club and tells him that he is not allowed to set foot in the club ever again. The boy tells him that he has no right to do that just because he is the son of Mr. Mercenary of the city. It does not mean he can do what he wants in the club. He responds that he is really an idiot, mentioning that if he already knew, the best room is not open to anyone, and that if he did not understand the requirements to enter it, he had already realized something. It turns out that our protagonist's friend is the owner of the club. We return to the Imperial Club where our protagonist's friend makes a snap, causing the bodyguards to indicate to the boys to leave the premises. While the boy resists, the other people around them started to feel uncomfortable. At that moment, the boy remembers that once his father told him not to mess with the boss of the Imperial Club, as he is considered very mysterious and should not be provoked, since he was the son of the Lord of the City of Mercenary. Our protagonist, a little shocked, realizes that in this, the father of our protagonist's friend did not want to take more responsibility, declaring himself the boss of the Imperial Club. Then the angry boy begins to shout at him, telling him that the young master is not going to protect him forever, indicating that he better take care of himself. Finally, he turns his back, making his way out, not without first indicating that because he is a friend of a prestigious family, they will back him up. Our protagonist's friend approaches and tells him not to let his spirits drop, inviting him to his room so that the next day we find ourselves at the entrance of the Forest of Demonic Spirits, where a bus full of young students arrives as they are going to take the practical exam. In this forest, in the outer part of the forest, there will be grade F demonic spirits, but there will also be wandering malicious spirits of rank, The teacher who carries out the practical exam tells the students that inside the forest, the grade of malicious spirits will increase to grade A, and that there will surely be some above that rank. Since the risk in this forest is very high, for their safety, they have hired the Iron Blood mercenaries. He says that this means that they will wander recklessly inside that forest, as if one of them interferes. they automatically lose the test. The young students, still shocked, could not believe that the Iron Blood mercenary would be willing to protect them. Our protagonist asks his friend if those were not the mercenaries of Kuiwu, where our friend responds that yes, they have a high ranking, but it does not matter as it could only be a coincidence, and that surely they can touch the students, making our protagonist calm down, exclaiming that if they did not get touched while taking the exam, he would not stay idle. The objective is to get an internal pill of grade F malicious spirit. If they are strong enough, they can obtain an internal pill of grade A, which is much better. After they take the exam, they will return. To gather where they started to return will not pass the test. The teacher wishing luck to all, and his young students already inside the forest of demonic spirits, in those they three begin to chat a bit about their pets. Girl asks our protagonist if in reality his pet was a Kirin, where he responds that no, that it is a day, by a subspecies of Kirin, making it even rarer of grade F, and with a 4-star evaluation, making it very powerful. At the time of a battle, our protagonist tells her that it is very handsome, although its name is very generic and really does not match. Our friend asks if his 205, that is his chubby husky, is not the same, saying that he looks into his eyes as they were full of wisdom while walking. They came across a flower of the scorching earth, which grows on the ground, but its roots penetrate into the underground lava, making it impossible to remove completely. The emotional girl tells our protagonist that it is very complicated to get one of these flowers and that they don't know how lucky they are to find one. The girl's father commented that a flower of the scorching earth so that his children are promoted from grade A, in that the friend, our protagonist, without knowing the situation, crouches to pull out the plant and take it. Our viewer that does not move, explaining that the roots of the flowers are penetrating deeply, the underground lava, that it is impossible to take the whole plant. Since brute force could waste the whole plant, the correct method of collection is to pick only one of its petals, making it so that in a couple of years it would bloom again. The friend stands up, but looks at them and says that he did not think he would be so smart. Our protagonist again crouches to grab only the petals, and as soon as he has it in his hand, a strong distortion of blue-reddish smoke is in front of our friend, making our protagonist have to run to get him out of there. A big explosion comes out after a blue flash, making an evil spirit of grade F with a 3-star evaluation. Our friends, perplexed, see the spirit a servant of the scorching earth. They are always present where there is a flower that they already eat out of nowhere. The girl sends her powerful phoenix towards the spirit, throwing a strong lightning attack wrapped in flames. But as it is time to wait, this one stopped it, as if it were a ball. Our friends pet an attack where it freezes the entire ground, leaving the spirit immobile, stunned. It looks around, unable to move our protagonists. Friend tells his pet that it's time to use his Osmatus frozen attack to finish it Daba, and performed his attack where his fragment of sharp ice swing towards the spirit. It looks up and performs a kind of fire shield, destroying our friend's attack, our protagonist's. Husky launches a lightning strong enough to burn its face. Our protagonist asks how the inner fire attack is making the spirit envelop in blue flames, and black lightning being that all the energy. The protagonist looks intently that suffering of the spirit, saying that the most painful feelings after being hit by the inner fire blow, that is the burning of his soul. A battle unleashes between the Snow Wolf King and the protagonist along with his friends, which are outnumbered, since the Wolf King had the help of his pack, which performs better at the time of wars, since they are very good at attacking in groups. The protagonist, a smile, tells his friends that if he destroys the gang, leader will collapse this. Since with a 2-star evaluation in that the protagonist swings over one of the hitting hard on the head, saying that his friend that day, cover him. Realizing that the lobule wanted to catch off guard from behind, the protagonist exclaims that if he thinks he can escape the system hiding from behind while the battle unfolds, Our friend asks Ada to do his attack on the frozen ground so that the wolves would be immobile, in that he launched his attack, creating a great clash of air, raising and freezing all the wolves, which were being enveloped in blue flames, causing many of the wolves to be perplexed seeing this grand power. The only one who can withstand the blow was the Wolf King, but this would not last long, as the chubby husky of our protagonist would bite precisely on the neck, thus taking his power, becoming the new alpha of the pack. He indicates to his pet to disperse his brothers. The husky barks, making the wolves retreat. The friend tells him that he can do that too. The protagonist explains to him that the husky can suppress evil spirits of paths or spiritual pets. The best part is that after this overwhelming battle, they managed to get the internal pill of the Snow Wolf King. Now, the only thing left was the flower to expel the cold before it could advance. They started walking and encountered a lake on the way, which left them astonished because it was not frozen, given that in this area temperatures reached -30°C and showed no signs of ice. Suddenly they hear something submerge. They look up and see something. The friend asks if a giant evil spirit was hiding in that lake, to which a blue whale from the void appears, valued at 3 stars of F rank. The girl, a bit confused, asks our protagonist what type of evil spirit this was, as she had never seen it in the index of evil spirits. He responds that they are void blue whales, which are extremely rare and not many people have seen them, and that is why they are not registered in the index of evil spirits. She replies, saying that he is very well informed. He smiles with a gesture of laughter. The friend approaches, asking if it is dangerous, to which he responds that it is not, as it is a non-aggressive F-grade evil spirit, which is not dangerous. But the whale, noticing their presence, decides to flee. Our protagonist takes off his jacket and dives into the water along with his chubby husky. The girl asks what he is doing, but he doesn't pay much attention. Once in the water, he is astonished by the speed at which this spirit swims. But looking a bit more, he becomes even more amazed as he finds the flower that expels cold. This explains why the lake was not frozen. The protagonist looks back at the spirit, and his priority is to catch it. He chases and positions himself behind it. At that moment, the chubby husky arrives, positioning itself in front of it, making it difficult to escape. The friend thinks he can perform a pincer attack, but had to keep quiet as they manage to catch it. The friend and the girl are left with some doubts, asking why he caught it, to which he responds that to survive, he had to eat something. But our protagonist realizes that the spirit is afraid of being eaten and tells it that if it doesn't want to be eaten, it would have to become one of his spiritual pets. The spirit quickly agrees, surprising him with how easy and quickly it accepted. He says he never thought there would be an animal weaker than a chubby husky. Since he wants it to be a new spiritual quota, he starts treating it better. The girl, upon hearing this, asks if he is talking about a beast tail that can evolve into a pen. She says it's really a shame he hasn't become a spiritual pet breeder. Our protagonist responds, saying that's not the best part. It makes a new pet teleport. The protagonist's friends are astonished, wondering why it disappeared. It went to collect the flowers that expel cold at the bottom of the lake and suddenly reappears. The lake begins to freeze. The friend asks why the lake is now freezing, to which our protagonist responds that it was because there were several flowers expelling cold at the bottom of the lake, and that's why it wasn't frozen. The whale spits them out, and the sister asks how it doesn't damage the flowers inside it, responding that this happens because contains a belly. The universe can accommodate all its things to say that the flower did not reach its stomach, so it stayed in another space. Our proto-friend excited. Although the dragon breath that can evolve Dabai and activate its drainage, it is really difficult to find Daba and can still advance, and all the materials were gathered, so you have to prepare Tabai. This gives him moral support, saying that it is for his own good. This and the friend of our prota and the girl he likes and the protazo remaining, since he felt a very strong energy in that powerful tornado of totally uncontrolled energy, making his sister bring out Soft Phoenix to create a shield to withstand that incredible intensity of power, when suddenly it only interrupted by launching a powerful green lightning that stopped Dai's energy. Our prota realizes that they are in an ambush, as expected. The ambush is being carried out by the boy who bothers our prota. But this time he arrived accompanied by the imposing ship also arrived with some iron blood mercenaries making this summon their pets in case the battle breaks out. Our prota, extremely shocked, looks at them, fixedly asking why they were together. The boy gets off his pet being. This is a mata and religious walking towards them, making our prota know that they were working for him since they had previously offended the boy in laughter. Stretches his hands thanking the gods because according to him, they were helping him. Or take the opportunity to tell our prota that he is a brat, that he thought he was someone influential, but he knows he is an orphan with no background and not to worry about ending his life in that. The friend our brot stands forward, directly challenging. Wu makes his friend understand that the conflict was not with him, that he would be able to hurt him, since he had pending matters with our prota. Told our prota that he would be willing to make enemies with them for a foreign problem. Our prota, already a little annoyed if the situation tells him if seriously, they thought he was going to die since there are 5 people with their spiritual pets and all were in the grade, eh? Since our friends only had 2 good, desperate gets tired of so much talk shouting that it is time to fight while the prota tells the girl to make her happy, contain the world of the red flame, and the boar colmillo. And here Husky will take care of the bear and the fighter kangaroo. The 2 pets pounce into the battle while Dabai was still recovering, in that the friend asks our prota what would happen with the boy's 2-leaf mantis that bothers him. This, with a small smile, tells him that he will take care of the boy. Astonished, asks him if he is very anxious to be eliminated first, since he approaches him without any pet. He runs straight to the mantis. While he approaches, tells him that he wants to kill him, but the prota tells him that it was something impossible. Our prota stands in front of the mantis, dodging its fearsome leaves, thinking in the middle that these mantises quickly close their leaves to cover him. But it was in vain, since our product uses the space change ability, making a large amount of energy wrap around him, thus forming a small sphere of energy to then appear behind the boy who bothers him, thus taking him tightly by the neck with a scream. Our prota tells him to leave everything they are doing, calling everyone's attention. This threatens to break his neck if he does not listen. He laughs and tells him that he and his mercenaries have nothing to do with him. If he wanted to kill him, the protest shadow, and told the boy that he is not cooperating with anyone. The boy, already tired, exclaims to him to please forgive him, that he will also help him deal with the mercenaries. The prota raises his gaze, and a flashback comes to him, and he begins to say if he ever thought of forgiving him, and that he had not forgiven his husky. Since he killed him without any problem, and without any compassion, he gets up, and just at this point, he raises, with his hand to the boy staring at him intently, telling him that he only wanted to give him a lesson, but as he hired people to kill him, this left him no other option. Suddenly a loud crack in all the silence. This was the boy's neck that our protagonist had already taken care of so that he wouldn't bother him anymore. One thought that he would be able to kill since he had killed without even blinking. Apparently, he was not underestimating the boy's pet. Goes crazy because of what was falling from its owner, making it explode in rage and attack fiercely. What they say was berserker mode with its blades. It tries to catch the protagonist, but he is using again the spatial change ability. Very annoyed, he complains to the lover that it was already the second time he escaped, and he yells at him to go and finish off his companions. The protagonist, seeing how everyone started to go towards his friends, he tells Boykan to send them to the dimensional space. He opens a portal in the ground just below them, making them stay in the dimensional space, a little confused. They wonder where they were, realizes that the special pet of our protagonist is still fighting against the lover and giving him a big blow to the mantis, but he has to finish as soon as possible since his friends cannot last long. There, since they can only stay for half a minute, since if they were left without strength to be able to use the spatial change. So they had to hurry William Henchman, who finished off as quickly as possible to keep his pet, suddenly a great burst of energy. This already begins to shine brutally. The friend realizes the energy change of David, of that powerful burst of energy, seems to buy. This seems more changed to imposing. He was successful in his advance, our friend happy, seeing that he gives the order to kill all the pets of the mercenaries. This is a movement sticking both legs in the ground, thus launching some sharp ice spikes. This in turn was accompanied by some small energy rays. These spikes pierce the lover and splitting him in 2 stabs, and the kangaroo and lifting him to a great height. The monkey and the bear, seeing that they were powerful, the attack block it with their huge arms. The mercenaries, amazed, try to flee since that powerful blow finished off one of their pets. He starts to turn around, but our protagonist is behind them, saying that it was already too late to escape. Everyone stared at him, since as he wanted to kill, it was better that they also prepare to be killed or scared. He claims to them that they are the Iron Blood mercenaries, that if they killed him, the whole group of mercenaries would go after him. The protagonist, a smile lowers his face and tells him that if they want to take revenge, he doesn't mind sending them to hell altogether to them. He grabs Goo's head tightly, smashing it against a bunch of trees, while the chubby husky's Phoenix took care of the other pets, the Phoenix launching some powerful flames at the boar, burning it as if it were a simple piece of meat to buy, and fought with the kangaroo, bursting him with a great amount of ice and energy. And the chubby husky had already taken care of the bear, since it was bleeding suns that above him, while our protagonist tells Goo that he was right, that being a spiritual master was not all solid rainbow, since it is true that all spiritual masters have to live their lives where they can't even be sure of their own safety. He falls to the ground. The friend, our protagonist, looks at his hands, since it was his first time killing people. He looks at the protagonist and asks him what he was doing, and he replies that the smell of blood attracts the fog wolves. And he responds that the smell of blood attracts the snow wolves, making them believe that they were killed by them, but the boar was burned and he had to cruck it since they only had ice abilities. So he sends it to the dimensional space, opening a portal and making the body disappear. The friend, our protagonist, tells him that his calmness is really disconcerting since the rise of the evil humanity will never return to the old times. We're still peaceful and the bad ones. Spirits are our enemies, but they are not the only enemies. Our protagonist says that even brothers for profit are capable of killing each other. Therefore, in a world as chaotic as this one, being kind to your enemy is seeking your own death. Night falls. Those who have gathered in a part of the demonic spirit forest are eating the meat of the spiritual pig, astonished as it is extremely delicious and the best conventional pork they had ever tasted in their lives. The girl tells him not to say that so loudly because if people find out they are eating the meat of a pet, they will be cursed to death, since there are many people who do not have a spiritual pet. Tabai's advancement was a complete success, and he had already collected the internal pills of the evil spirits needed to pass the test. The protagonist tells his friends that there is still 1 day left before the test ends, and that they could also stay training in the forest, to which his friend responds that it is an excellent idea, and thus be able to see Dai's skills. The girl notices that someone is approaching, and she turns around, and the protagonist also sees that it is his roommate, and she is injured. She approaches them, asking for water. She falls, but the protagonist quickly supports her and asks her what happened, but she falls unconscious. He asks her to wake up, but it is useless. The friends ask if he knows her. He responds that yes, she was a kind of roommate. They give her a little water since that was what she asked for from the beginning. The friend cannot believe that such beauty shares a room with him. A bit embarrassed, he responds that they only share a room and do not live together as such. Realizing that she could not drink water properly because she is unconscious, he decides to help. He takes the water and stores it in his cheeks to give it to her mouth to mouth. But as he is approaching, his companion approaches with a very cold look and asks what he is doing. He responds that why she is so surprised, saying that she is in terrible condition and cannot drink water on her own, and he was helping her. The girl says it is better if she does it, and he does not refuse and gives her the water. She delivers the water to the girl in her mouth, but the boys are extremely amazed, saying it was an incredibly hot scene. After the girl separates from her but she still does not get up, the protagonist is not very familiar with saving people, so he suggests performing CPR. But the girl does not know how to execute such a maneuver. He approaches the girl and says that he has seen several people do this maneuver and it should not be so difficult. He has to apply pressure to her chest, and he places his hands on one of her breasts. The friend, astonished, asks where he is touching. The protagonist responds that he is trying to save her and must be thinking wrongly. The roommate wakes up and, with a coquettish voice, asks if they are big, to which, without thinking, the protagonist responds yes. Then he realizes the girl woke up and nervously tells her he did not mean to say anything. She asks if he was the one sharing the room with her. The protagonist realizes her attitude is a bit strange since he was used to her always trying to kill him, and it really does not matter to him. She says to call her his older sister. They are amazed by what she says. She arrives and asks the other girl if she was the one who kissed her, saying that now she is one of her people. He responds that if she was mocking her, and the protagonist thinks the character of King Kong was obviously an ice king, but this was more like a goose girl. He did not know if it was a second personality. He cannot contain himself and asks the girl if really who gains and what happens to her body. She responds it could be Kengan. Or maybe while grabbing a piece of meat to eat, she says he must treat her as if she were Kengan. She begins to explain how she got that wound. She says that these were because she was careless when dealing with a high-level mission, even though her objective was only a plant-type evil spirit. She underestimated its strength. It was no less than her level. They graduated his strength was no less than his degree of they caught her and almost dies. The protagonist mentalizes that she is being vague with her identity as expected. He did not know if it was really a problem, or however the mission of degree is that she had mentioned was a training opportunity. He offers his help because the evil spirit was of great power. He tells her that in return he asks for a division of the commissions to share with him. She expresses that she will be easy food for that evil spirit, and he only asks if she accepts the deal or not. She anyway accepts because she is sure that she will only go to die finishing eating the last piece of meat. Upon hearing what the girl said, the boys who accompany our protagonist did not hesitate to accompany our protagonist since they were in a group and they stay together. In the end, they follow you rest to regain their strength and thus leave in the morning with all their strength. The next morning being very early, they are walking through the forest to what they find a tree of very strange appearance, to which the fourth tells him that it is a plant-type evil spirit, which she had commented on earlier. Our protagonist's friend asks how something so old can be such an evil spirit. It was a spirit called Celestial Ancestral Tree, which is evaluated by 4 fearsome stars. Obviously, it was not an easy battle, in that the girl summons her pet lens instead of being the panther. It is a rock bear of Earth. The protagonist impacted wonders why she did not release the panther, asking himself the question that it is likely that she has 2 spirits in one pet just like him. The powerful rock bear runs towards the powerful tree, shaking the whole earth, and this pulsating its roots towards the protagonist, shouting, saying that the tentacle monster is approaching the bear, dodging all the tentacles in balance, propelling itself against it, trying to lift this great spirit, clawing its powerful claws, clinging to it, making as much force as it can on the ground beneath it, cannot withstand so much weight, and it ends up breaking, but this spirit will not let itself be easily won, throwing its tentacles, wrapping its whole body, and intertwining its neck, exerting a great amount of force to try to leave it immobile. This complicates the battle. The companions of the protagonist complicated that things are getting in, that another set of tentacles appear, wrapping everyone to be able to leave them immobile. These tentacles cling to the limbs of our friend, in that a powerful explosion of flames unfolds coming out of it. The phoenix rising to the skies with an incredible amount of fire bursting from it, making the tentacles of this plant-type spirit. But the regenerative powers of this plant are complete madness, as it can recover almost immediately. The tentacles end up immobilizing our protagonist, where the tentacles begin to emit a very bright blue-colored light. The protagonist realizes that it is stealing all his vitality. This makes the powerful phoenix burst again. An overwhelming amount of fire, making an incredible wall of fire, thus burning the tentacles. The protagonist does everything possible to escape quickly, since if he stays longer, he would be an easy meal for this evil tree. This spirit, being attacked by the powerful flames of the phoenix, regenerates very quickly, making the protagonist realize that it is an evil wood spirit and deduces that it must fear fire. The incredible divine power of the phoenix can harm it, but not completely destroy it. While our protagonist wants to see its regeneration speed, he executes his move of internal fire strike, enveloping himself in a totality of a high amount of blue flames, harming and destroying all the tentacles that surrounded him, turning them into ashes. The spirit fears this type of move, quickly separating the remaining tentacles from the protagonist. Seeing this, the chubby husky takes advantage to deliver his internal fire strike move to try to kill it. He accumulates all his energy, running towards it while all his power gathers and envelops him, launching himself and destroying its entire physical form and weakening all the tentacles that surrounded our protagonist's companions. Our protagonist highlights that it was only luck, since it was a coincidence that his strike was internal, stopping its regeneration, to which the girl who is his roommate tells him that luck is also part of strength and not to underestimate it. He killed it so that the spirit's internal pill would belong to him, to which the husky holds an enormous, very bright green crystal between its jaws. This is delivered to our protagonist, containing a large amount of vital force, thus being a 3-star material. The protagonist says it is perfect to save someone's life in danger. The roommate mounts her bear, separating from them and shouting that the evil spirit was already dead, their mission already completed, saying that she will meet the protagonist again someday, shouting for him to give her part of his conversion, but he did not want to listen to her in the first place. The girl reminds him that they already have to return since it is the last day of their evaluation, and if they don't return on time, they will fail the test. They return to the entrance of the evil spirit forest, already being a bit later, where several students are returning. When they arrive, they are told that the students who managed to complete the test have to stand aside. They are congratulated for completing the exam and told to prepare to become officially spiritual masters. They begin to name the students of the finalized class. More than 100 people were eliminated. The girl named among the 2 best, Link being the second best, Lin being the first in the class. A special circumstance during the evaluation, for which the academy decided that apart from the higher classes, there would have to be special classes, to which she says it is a class that can see 5 people of very outstanding ranking, and there are only 5 students classified, naming the protagonist's friend and the girl. Among the students around, saying that the girl is the daughter of the president of the city's Masters Association and the protagonist's friend. Prota, who was the young master in the city of Mercenary, was expected named all the called online before being heard technically unnoticed. They did not know much about them just by their appearance. It seems they were brothers, all with a great intrigue, wondering who was the last student in that silence, being the owner of the place, waiting for the teacher's response, thus naming our Prota. The students amazed, wondering how it could be him, all with a face of envy, saying that he could not even be a pet contract, and they see his husky, asking if it was a spiritual pet. The 5 students form following the teacher, since they were the 5 privileged to see the special class. The others stayed waiting for the instructions of the other teacher, to which a loud scream of halt was heard, which seems a new era of the teacher where he shouts to our Prota that he was a murderer, while behind him he pulls out the corpses he murdered. This one says he has to pay with his life. The teacher asks what is the meaning of this scandal, to which he responds that he murdered his nephew. The Prota says what are the proofs that say where he murdered them. The Prota says that then the main teacher was part of the family, definitely birds of a feather, to which the teacher throws the mantis towards him, shouting that he will kill them, to which the teacher holds an ice shield, stopping the attack of her lover. This one says he will not let him touch a hair, that he will not let him touch a hair while a mist surrounds them. This one asks why he is protecting himself. Brat. And she responds that he is her student, and she will be responsible for his safety, and she does not care if he is the head of the family. That anyway, she would say that this one who is impacted by the teacher's reaction, responding that if there is no conclusive evidence, then they will leave the place. Realizing the gravity of the death of his nephew, knows that if he blames him, his life will be over. Originally wanted to find our prota as he held a grudge against the murdered boy. This to be the scapegoat, but did not count on the teacher was going to hurt his plans. But in reality, he does not know if he was, so he will blame him anyway. Making all the Iron Blood mercenaries, when the time comes, will not let him escape. They are in the classroom with the teacher. The girl comes and asks the teacher why the academy decided to make that special class, and why were there so few chosen. She responds that it is because of their bloodline quality talent of their spiritual pets that have exceeded expectations, that were much stronger than the students of the upper class, as it would be a waste to gather them with them, tells them that they can retire. And tomorrow, their official training will begin. The teacher tells our prota to stay behind for a while. He has some ideas why the teacher wants to stay alone with him. He asks her why she is stunned as he leaves. He tells her that he will obey since she is very sexy. Obviously, that was what our prota thought, as he is a little handsome, but when looking at him like this, it is very embarrassing. She also tells him that if he really wants to chase him, he can find time to sit and have a coffee. This one gives him a blow on the head that he was thinking why he doesn't look well, and first think about his sign result to what previously she tells him to stop being silly and asked him if he has already entered the awake mode. The prota is confused and asks her what the awake mode is. He is in a kind of quilt. He makes a kind of holograph where all the information about the awake mode comes out. He says that the awake mode is when compatibility is achieved between a master and a spiritual pet that reach 50%. When this happens, the spiritual master, the higher the power of this, the more they can combat their powers, and their compatibility reaches 100%. This can merge, and they can use absolutely all the powers of the spiritual pet. But apparently he doesn't care much about the fusion, where the teacher tells him not to underestimate the awake mode, since it is very difficult to reach 50% compatibility with one of the spiritual pets. Many masters have not been able to unlock the awake mode. She reminds him when she saw him fight against the ice-backed wolf, as he only defeated him with one paw using his own strength, but she believes he has already reached the awake mode state. He says to himself in his mind that the reason he can use them because of his spiritual pet is because of the system. It may be that thanks to that, it helped directly activate awake. Besides that, according to the teacher link, there should be others who have a strength superior to that of normal humans. The teacher asks him if he can say the compatibility of him and his pet at that moment, to which he responds a little confused. Where can he see that she tells him that if that's the case that he hits her? He, astonished, asks her if she was a masochist. She looks at him and tells him to stop being silly and hurry up. She is not afraid of his little fist, to which the prota tells her to prepare to keep her guard up. He pushes his fist against her, while mentally says that it will only be 50% of his strength. She easily stops the blow, making him be shocked. She arrives and throwing her body on her back, making him spin. He does a turn in the air and hits his back on the ground. He gets back up and sees that the teacher is attacking in a very serious way and tells him again to hit her with all his strength, and thus he can see his and his pet's combustibility, and he warns her that she better be careful where she jumps and tries to hit her with a powerful kick, seeing that she is already taking this. Seriously, she prepares to counterattack, but then some flames appear from the movement of her hands. This one hits him compared to what a large cloud of smoke comes out, separating some fire from her hands while the smoke disappears. The teacher's face becomes visible, to which the prota wonders that blow was powerful. He didn't know if the teacher had already unlocked the awake mode. The blow was such that his foot was on fire. The teacher yells again that it's not bad, but to try again. While saying that his hand fills with strong energy, Jam tells him that if that fist hits him, he could be completely roasted. To this, the protagonist's eyes turn a galactic shade. He lunges at her, disappears quickly, and reappears. The teacher is perplexed and wonders what that was. The teacher somehow dodges him, and he, surprised, asks himself how she could recover so quickly from his ability. In the moment, he stretches out his hand and accidentally touches one of her breasts. She tells him that instead of studying correctly, he learned to attack other people's fish. She then throws a big punch at the protagonist's chest, knocking him to the ground, and tells him to give up. She asks him what kind of power he used to make her lose consciousness for a moment. His teacher tells him that he has great talent, and that he should have lessons with her separately to awaken that talent, clarifying that it will be very useful for the future and for what is coming. The protagonist leaves the faculty very happy, because finally things were going his way. His companions were waiting for him, telling him to grab a drink, but the protagonist says he has some things to do first, so he declines and leaves. But someone felt envious of him, this girl who looked at him with internal hatred, as if he had done something to her in the past. Later, he arrived at a registry to test his level, and upon arrival, the receptionist asks if he wants to apply for the beginner or intermediate level. But the protagonist was looking for something much more advanced, and the receptionist tells him he looks very young for the level he intends to reach. The protagonist tells her not to worry about that, as he will pay the commission. He gives it to her, and the girl hands him the form to fill out. The protagonist enters the room where everyone was a bit older and looked at him badly, saying he was just a rich brat who wanted to waste his life. The first lesson was being given by a professor well known in the city as a very good spiritual teacher. He explains that the test subject is a celestial monkey of rank 5 stars that transformed into stone due to a mutation given by its spiritual controller. But it didn't go well and ended up being a statue forever. Only someone with a lot of talent could get it out of that state. The protagonist raises his hand because he believes he can do it. This makes everyone look at him with a lot of hatred. What was that rich brat thinking? The protagonist says he can do what is being said and asks for the ingredients, which were very expensive, but the protagonist doesn't care about that. He starts the procedure, and the professor explains step by step what he has to do. The protagonist advances the steps until the professor stops talking, and he does it alone. After a while, he succeeds, and everyone is totally impressed, wondering who that brat was and how he did something that even the most specialized teachers of the faculty couldn't do. It's totally impressive. The gorilla wants to stay with our protagonist. At first, the teacher didn't want to, but in the end, he let him and gave him the staff they had given him. The first cap that serves for short or long distance and can be extended to medium and long distances, and mentions to his new pet that first they had to form a contract, and then he has an exclusively special task for him to leave, to be discovering this in a next part. But all ready for us to have that our next part here in our channel.